No, I feel like the award is validation for those who stuck with me. It's just validation for people who support like an unconventional artist or a non-mainstream artist. It's validation for people who want intelligent comedy. It's validation for people who, for promoters, for people who own comedy clubs, for producers in smaller towns who are like, chalo show karte hain. I'd never put myself out there in a show before. The show before that was called Veer for India, which was externally about India, and I always wanted that show to be like a Rajma Chawal show. You know what I mean? Where you're like, oh, like a comfort watch kind of. He's talking about the Parle Ji and the old monk and everything I know. I wasn't raised in India for the first 8 years of my life, and not a day goes by that I don't wish I was. You know, because that's something that's been brought up with my narrative quite a bit. Are bahar ka hai. And to my point, you don't get to choose the first country that you're raised in. You don't get to choose the first language that you're taught. You only get to choose the country that you carry. And I carry India, and I choose India, right? So
All right, so welcome to this conversation. Before we start, I must say that I'm a huge admirer of the person I'm about to interview, who's also a friend of mine. Veer Das, actor, comic musician, has won the 2023 International Emmy Award for Best Comedy Series for his Netflix comedy special, Veer Das Landing. He shares the award with British series Derry Girls, and it's really amazing because and I know this is being brought up alongside the award because portions of that special were based on Veer's experience around the controversy around his monologue Two Indias, which was performed at Kennedy Center, where he contrasted the rich and poor India, the differences that we have right now. He received a standing ovation. He also received a lot of criticism, and he received some FIRs, some complaints, some threats that he talked about in that special. It's all now resulted in this wonderful, award that everybody in India is very proud of. I know, yeah, Veer, congratulations and thank you for making time
thank you.
to speak with us. You received a very different kind of welcome when you flew in from New York this
Um,
time.
yeah,
No
I
Jane
did.
on Air India this time saying, please
I,
drink the
I, I,
Jane, Mr. Da.
I flew Air India for sure. I don't know if this is tacky or not, but my publicist has insisted that I show you the award for a glimpse of a
Show me
second,
the
and then I.
award.
All right, so
Yes.
this is the Emmy. There you go. That's
Is it heavy?
what it is. It's damn heavy. So what happened was when I won it, and I'll slide it out now because you don't want it to be this
No,
thing.
put it
So
in the frame. Do the thing.
okay,
Make the publicist happy. Make
do
me
the
happy.
thing. All right, make the publicist happy. And now there's somebody at the door with some chat. Can I take a second and just tell them
Yes.
to go away if
Go
that's
ahead.
okay?
Go ahead.
Give
Yeah.
me one
Yes.
second. Sorry. My bad. I'm in a hotel
Everybody must
in
have that.
Panchkula. सर कुछ चल रहा है अभी आप थोड़ी देर बाद आइए ठीक है थैंक यू हाँ sorry okay
You're welcome to drink
uh,
your chai, mate.
no it's fine it's the hotel has sent some cake
Oh.
which I'm not allowed to eat because I start a film soon and I've spent the last 3 days consuming copious amounts of sugar which I now need to get out of my system. Sorry, what was the question?
So the question was, did you have to have gin on the Air India flight this time because it was a very different welcome?
No, it was great. I flew Air India for sure, so that's one. And then I had a lovely cabin crew who, these Emmys they don't give you they give you a dabba to take them home in. And the second I won it, of course, happy and all of that stuff. But my first thought was, how do I get this through JFK? I'm a brown man with a beard, and this is very sharp. And I'm not checking it in. That's for damn sure. So I have to find a way to hand carry it. So then what I did was I took the dabba and I stole the belt from both bathrobes in my hotel, and I fashioned a handle on it. So the Air India people were like, "Sir, matlab hai kya isme? What is this jugadu suitcase you have this thing?" And the Air India crew were very cool. They waited about, I think, 9 hours into the flight. And then when I woke up, the captain and the crew kind of, they were like, "Sir, can we see the award?"
Oh.
So we just all kind of took a look at it. And I, it's been a, it's been a storm since it happened. So even I didn't really quite have time to sit with it. So yeah. So we all looked at it together on an Air India flight, which is kind of nice.
That is kind of nice. Something about Air India sort of makes you feel like hugged, right? And scolded,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. You're home before you take off for home, which is nice.
do you feel, and this is the naughty question, right? Do you feel that the award is vindication for everything that happened after, the Two Indias monologue?
No, I feel like the award is validation for those who stuck with me. I think that's what it is. I feel like it's just validation for people who support like an unconventional artist or a non-mainstream artist. It's validation for people who want intelligent comedy. It's validation for people who, for promoters, for people who own comedy clubs, for producers in smaller towns who are like, chalo show karte hain. Let's put up a stand-up comedy show and book a hall that they can't fully afford to pay for in the hope that you will sell tickets. And I think it's validation for Indian comedy. Like, I think that's what it is. This job comes with its brickbats and it comes with its challenges. But if you ever let them turn you into sort of a tit for tat scenario in your head, you've lost. It's still a blessing at the end of the day to be able to do this job and to get laughter from the number of people that I get laughter for. So I don't have a lot of fans. I have few,
Mm.
um, but they're passionate, and I think like this is validation for them more than anything else. You
Well,
know.
you sell out arenas all over the world, so that's an understatement to say I don't have a lot of fans.
I mean, if you consider it, pragmatically, I tell my wife this sometimes, which is that, yeah, I can get between 2 and 5,000 people in a room in any major city in the world. But realistically, that means I'm as famous as an H&M underwear sale. If you think about it, right? It's not, you know, you know, in a world of David Beckhams and Shah Rukh Khans and et cetera, et cetera, it's not that much, but it's a blessing.
Practical and durable, then.
There you go, practical and durable, just like an underwear. That is the. This is my new slogan for my Virdas, just like underwear. Correct.
You did say, of course. Sorry, that's my dog going off. You
That's
you
okay.
did say, of course, that the brick bats come with it, and the environment that we're in right now is that being part of being a comedian. That there will be threats, there will be FIRs, there will be a lot of criticism. There's a lot of trolling, and you just need to be prepared to sort of deal with that environment.
I wish for the audacity to be imperfect more. I think, uh, and not just for myself, but like for young comedians as well. Like, a joke really doesn't get good until the 85th time you do the joke and you've rewritten it, many, 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 many times. Like Virdas Landing, by the time you saw it on Netflix, it had done 165 to 180 shows across the world. So every word was thought about. Really, what when comedians come under the spotlight for their words, oftentimes it's early into the development of a joke and it's not fully thought out yet. So I just,
Yeah.
if there's one thing I would wish for, it's just give us the audacity to be imperfect and to
Yeah.
work on it. Just give it time, and then when it's out as the most thought out, polished version of what we have to say, which, like other art forms, like a song, for instance, you only ever get to hear the mixed, mastered, best leveled version of the song. um, Wait for the best leveled version of the joke and then have a reaction to that. And then at that point, any reaction is a fair reaction within the confines of feedback, I think.
Mm. Yeah, we could spend some time talking about what that
Yeah.
feedback is, but I
Yeah.
really want to understand your process because you took what, according to you, was a really difficult period, and you
Yeah.
were able to turn it into material, very successful material that really reached across the space between audience and people watching at home, and it
Yeah.
made a mark. Tell us how that experience became Virdas Landing. What was that process?
I'd never put myself out there in a show before. The show before that was called Veerdas for India, which was externally about India, and I always wanted that show to be like a Rajma Chawal show. You know what I mean? Where you're like, oh, like a comfort watch kind of. He's talking about the Parle Ji and the old monk and everything I know. But at some point I was like, oh, I'm 40 and nobody knows a damn thing about who I am as a comic or who I am as a person. Forgive me, and how I feel about things. So that was one of the missions. And then, you know, I I have this strange job, right? Where in a touring year, like this is an acting year, but in a touring year, I spent 8 months missing home, and I am people's catch up to home sometimes. You show up at Carnegie Hall or whatever, and you've not been in a room with, if there's 3,000 people there, 1,500 are Indians. You've not been in a room with 1,500 Indians for some people a decade, until I show up in your town. So I'm kind of like your reunion with home and your representative of home. And so it's a trippy thing to spend time traveling the entire world, being a custodian of this feeling of home and thinking of home. And like that's the central piece of Veerdas Landing. And so there's no way to talk about that without being emotional and without being vulnerable. That would be disingenuous because you're talking to people who are emotional and vulnerable about the concept of home. So um and then the bit with the soil doesn't hurt. We worked on that, so it's a good reveal at the end of the show. So I think that's where the process came in, where I was like, okay, the central feeling of the show is the feeling of home. Now, how do I attach the feeling of home to who I am? That means I really have to share. So I have to share the fact that I I wasn't raised in India for the first 8 years of my life, and not a day goes by that I don't wish I was. You know, because that's something that's been brought up with my narrative quite a bit. Are bahar ka hai. And to my point, you don't get to choose the first country that you're raised in. You don't get to choose the first language that you're taught. You only get to choose the country that you carry. And I carry India, and I choose India, right? So that was very important to me to put that story out there and to say, yes, I'm this mix, but um, hopefully I'm still Indian enough for all of us. And it was a special shot in America. So I also wanted to give them a little bit of an American, an Indian perspective on America that isn't very pandering. Because sometimes,
Yeah.
you know how immigrant comics can be like, oh, wow, look at the big buildings, etc. I wanted to be like, no, your gun culture is insane and your president ain't far behind sometimes, etc., etc., etc. So I wanted to put an Indian perspective out there. And I think the soil brings it home. So that was the process. Sorry if that's a rambling answer.
No, it's
I'm
not
not good
rambling
at,
answer. In fact, unlike, and you shared this award with Delhi Girls, which is a massive
yes,
production. It's
yeah,
huge. In comparison, Landing seems like one person. It seems like a one man sort of team,
yeah,
but it's not. There were people behind you. There were people
yes.
working with you, and it does take a team to sort of make something this
Oh, hell
wonderful.
yes. Yeah.
Do you want to
Yeah.
talk about your team and the people who sort
Yes.
of?
So we were up against Derry Girls, who we all thought was going to win. I'm going to be very honest, because they're one of the largest Netflix comedies in the world. And the if you think about this as an award for, um, it's a Goliath of a show, and they deserve to win. So I want to begin with saying that. But you know, I have maybe 9 people who worked on this show. So there's Monica Shergill, Tanya, Swati, and Sneha at Netflix, who were like, let's go do this show. Um, my 2 producers with me are Akash and Kavi, and my manager Reg Tigerman, and then the agency, UTA and Doug, and then Jay Oza, who shot Gully Boy, shot the hell out of it. So suddenly a comedy special looked a little bit more filmic than a normally comedy special does. There was no lighting as such, it was very basic, and there wasn't any big dhamaka set or anything like that. It's just sand. The director's an idiot. I directed it. And But what I will say, humbly, what I like about this category is it allows a small production to punch above its weight, because laughter is still laughter, right? That's the intended outcome. And a comedy special is intense filmmaking. It's not one camera, it's not 2 cameras, it's 12 cameras sometimes to shoot a comedy special. So the DP is working harder than he would on a film shoot day, and if he gets it wrong, there's no retake for a DP. A Bollywood sound designer is pasting a song or mixing a scene. There are 860 laughs each, which have to be designed and leveled into this thing. So the sound mixer is working harder than this thing. The lighting designer is changing more lighting live than in the stuff they do in post. So it is filmmaking. Make no mistake, it's filmmaking. So I think it deserves to compete.
I want to just explain this to our audience who are not familiar, right? So the Primetime Emmy Awards are for television
Yes.
or non-film shows that
Yeah.
are produced in the US for the US audience. There's the Daytime Emmy Awards are for midday sort of soap opera type of
Yeah.
shows. And the International Emmy, which is sitting in front of Veer Das on his table right now, is for shows made for television, non-film, across the world. So effectively, what you're looking at is an award for the best piece of comedy made in the last year across the world. Uh, has that sunk in yet? Have you told yourself that when you woke up in the morning that Emmy Award winner
No.
Veer Das?
No. You want the real truth? I'll tell you the real truth. All right.
Tell me,
This is the real truth.
always.
Everybody's been crying around me, right? So my mom and dad were crying, and my sister was crying, and my wife was crying, and I uh, I didn't. I was very, very flustered in the speech because I genuinely did not think I was going to win. And then suddenly he was like, "It's a tie. There's two envelopes," and I was like, "What the hell is going on?" And suddenly I was first. He said my name first. I mean, and so I ran up to stage. 25 seconds later, I was standing backstage and I was just panicked because I looked at my manager. I'm like, please tell me I didn't mess this up, that I thanked everybody. So, did I get my wife? He's like, yes. I'm like, did I get Netflix? He's like, yes. I'm like, did I get the Academy? He's like, yes. And then we were walking by the kitchen and my manager, Reg, is like, you used to be a dishwasher and you're standing next to a dishwashing rack right now. He's like, we're walking to this room where all the big, the press is there. He's like, let's take a photograph here. This will be the photograph you remember. So then I'm just standing with an Emmy next to a dishwashing, station. Um, and then we went out and we did the thing, but still not emotional about it. And then last night, I saw Amul's page, right? And I was in an Amul cartoon, and then I
Yes.
cried.
Yeah.
So you know that's that's what it means to me. So to I'm more emotional about that. For how I feel about my country and what this show is about, and to come home to that made me more emotional. You know.
I get that. I get that. Um, I remember you. I don't think you remember me, but I remember you 20 years ago at the CNBC TV 18 newsroom doing
Yeah.
your comedy special on television at a time when nobody else was doing it. You
Yeah.
pioneered stand-up comedy at all in India. It was a very different thing until then. Until you came
With
in,
due credit
said it
to the
can
Johnny
be
Levers
interesting.
and the
Yes,
Bamle Ranis and all who came before us. I have to say those are doors that they opened. You know.
yes, yes. Do you believe that now with this award, these are new doors you're opening for Indian comedy overseas to be taken seriously for what it is? So it's not just a character in a show that you add for diversity, but actually an Indian voice telling stories from an Indian perspective about, like you said, America, about the rest of the world, about racism, about colonialism, about abortion laws, about gun laws, but an Indian perspective that's taken seriously. Have you opened a new door, in your opinion?
I I mean, it takes more than one person to open a door that large, right? So I think Netflix opened a door for global voices. You have to give that credit, or YouTube does that as well. And because of that culture, we now at least get to be authentic when we go
Mm.
across the world. Because earlier, they knew five things about India, and you kind of had to show up and play ball within those five things. But those five things were already being served by a local, American Indian or British Indian or Aussie Indian comic who existed there. But now, because of these platforms, I get to show up with the sixth thing and the seventh thing that you don't know about India. So, we're talking about Noida in Norway, or we're talking about DPS in Doha, like that's the idea. So now that that's open, that door's open. Um, I hope what this does is it just opens ears, for every Indian comic to come out and say, here's my story about a place that you don't know and that you've never been to. But watch me, this new Indian comic from, Pune, take you
Mm.
on a journey that is far more imaginative than your local comics. I hope it does that. I just hope it opens ears for that.
You perhaps have spent more time collectively with the Indian diaspora NRI audience than anyone else because you're traveling. You're sort of you also apparently eat in their homes and
Yeah.
hang out with some of them when you're overseas. Tell us what the larger feeling is among Indians living overseas right now. What are you picking up from them?
I mean, I usually get their kids, right? So my fan base is very young. So I think for them, it's sometimes a big surprise to see an edgy Indian. Do you know what I mean? Because NRI kids often grow up in far more conservative homes than we grow up in Delhi and Mumbai, etc. Because sometimes it's their parents have carried over that snapshot version of India that they last left with. So suddenly to have a guy from Mumbai come in and say, "Oh no, this is what we all think, and this is just passe for us, so we all hook up," or whatever. I think it kind of opens their eyes, but I'd like to think, or I'd like to hope, I make them want to visit India. Like that's what I hope. I feel like for the kids that come in and that my fan base outside is largely 18 to 25. I hope they want to visit India after the show. That's what I hope.
That's really cool to say you have a fan base that's 18 to 25. So
It's
Gen
insane,
Z.
Faye. Yeah, man. To you know, my wife Shivani was joking about it the other day. She's like, "You were meant for this generation because the the generation before this kind of valued like stardom and aesthetics and big productions and great lighting and fancy music." And this generation has done all that stuff on Instagram for themselves. So they've looked behind the curtain. So
Yeah.
they're kind of like, what else can you offer? How authentic are you? So they value authenticity a little bit more. But it is supremely weird to be in your 40s performing for young kids. And they have sometimes thankfully missed out on your early filmography. So your so their reference for you is current, which is nice.
I did talk about the fact that you brought up in your special, you've talked about racism and history and abortion laws and gun laws. And there's a lot to be said about the fact that between, various establishments, between the Indian establishment right now and cancel culture and trolling and, FIR happy junior politicians, that there's the space for expression and the freedom of expression is sort of shortening, especially for younger comedians. We've seen a lot of them, have face FIRs and threats and spend time in jail, and it's not, it's not a easy career anymore.
Yeah.
It's a tough career to pick and to choose, and people feel like they can only make jokes about traveling and airlines and uncles because there's nothing else that we can truly laugh at anymore. Do you agree with that?
I think it's tougher. I'm not gonna lie, and I think it's tougher everywhere in the world. By the way, not just domestically. Like right now with cancel culture, I do think it's tough to be a comic elsewhere too. So you do have to adapt, and one of the things you do have to adapt to on the let's take the positive end of the spectrum first. The one thing you have to adapt to is now the audience's voice is as loud as yours, right? So earlier it was, hey, here are my jokes, and if you didn't like it, I'm off to the next city. I'm done. But no, now the audience can follow you. They have a voice. They have social media. They're empowered. That's not going anywhere, right? So you do have to adapt that and to that. And if you're going to take the praise that comes with that, you have to take the opposite. That's one. So within that confines of feedback and honoring the audience's voice, you have to honor the voices that like you and that don't like you. But when feedback crosses over into sort of other territories, what I would say is you are in an art form that allows you to talk about it and deal with it better than other art forms would. That's the bright side that I would put it to, because I'm not gonna. I'm too senior in comedy to give people the downside. I'm gonna give you the bright side, right? So the bright side is you can write a joke about it tomorrow, and
Hmm.
whatever you're going through, you should write a joke about it tomorrow. You shouldn't be doing press, and you shouldn't be doing, you shouldn't be doing any of these things. You have art. You have a great art form that lets you talk about all of it. Um, And you know, sometimes it makes for the best jokes, is what I would say. And hopefully, once you're through it, everybody will have a laugh about it. You know.
I'm going to, a lot of people would ask you about your advice for younger comics, and I know you've spoken about that in the past, but I want your advice for the audiences, for the people who are listening, for the people who are consuming the comic content that Indian comedians are currently, or comedians around the world are currently putting out. Do we need to perhaps be or remind ourselves that these are human beings, they're doing their jobs, they're writing jokes, they're trying their best, they're making a living, and not be so perhaps angry about everything that we see and hear?
Um, I would say three things to the audience humbly. All right. Number one, please give us time to be imperfect and time to perfect an imperfect joke that needs to be thought out. And that's one. Number two, understand that a clip never represents a show. That's very important for you to understand. If you come to a show, it's 100 minutes, and I will talk about everything under the sun, from my childhood to this to that, etc., etc. So if you see one clip that is 20 seconds, please don't make the assumption that that's the content of the show. It never is. And three, just humbly, please remember that this job was created to make you look good. It was created to make the audience look good. My job was created to humanize gifted, chosen, famous, powerful people. That's the job of a jester, is to take the most beautiful, chosen people in the world and for a split second humanize them. And it kind of makes them more beautiful. And it kind of gives them more power when they can take that joke. And we do that by saying such things about ourselves and making such an ass of ourselves that you feel better about yourself. So if I'm making fun of you, I'm doing it and it will make you look good. I promise you.
Veer Das, Emmy Award winner, thank you so much
Thank you so much.
for speaking with me and giving us your time. And thank you for all the laughs, Veer. I wish you very, very good luck.
I'm getting on stage tonight, and this will make my life much more difficult if I get on stage. So I'm going to put it back in the box and do the job.
All right. Good luck. Good luck. Good luck, Veer.
All right.
Thank you.